last time I did a tutorial on hair, it was not very comprehensive, and I do it completely different now, so we gonna do it again. So we're gonna start with straight hair, and then go curlier and curlier until we reach like 4C. So even when you're doing straight hair, kind of curve it into the body, like it's draping over. And on this side, we're gonna do a swooping line down here, and then it goes like over the shoulders. Add the edge of the silhouette and continue over here. Like I said, none of these lines should be perfectly straight. I think that's a good rule just in general when you're drawing. The biggest, hardest part about drawing hair is planning out all of the little, just the absolute mess that is a bunch of strands of hair. But when you envision them like strips of paper, it's not that hard. Let's not give them a mullet. They need hair up here. Get some nice, gentle, curved lines. And these I'm just bunching together in groups that are generally the same size. When you're drawing hair, don't think about it too much. Don't plan it out. Don't plan out every line because you're going to paint over it. Actually, I decided this haircut sucks too. Hang on. Okay, in this one, we're going to add kind of another dimension to the hair by making like this crazy jellyfish looking M. We're going to kind of use the paper strip method again by imagining this as a flat piece and curling it up like that. So it's going to be thinnest when it's turned to the side. And since this front part is sticking up, that means the rest of it in the back here is also going to be sticking up. Can't just like leave it. Now the fun part. Alright, let's just pick some random ass color for this, like green. Sure, green, why not? Next, I do the lowlights. I make a new layer set to multiply, not shade, like I used to do. Shade makes things really, really saturated and kind of makes the colors gross sometimes. It's too hardcore. Now, let's take a more of a bluish color to make our shade. And just paint it on here in the shadow parts. Definitely in the root areas and underneath all of the quote-unquote paper pieces, paper strips, and definitely behind here. So in all the little nooks and crannies, you want to get just some shade to set it in. And lower the opacity to, that looks fine. And take the same exact color, because why not? Make the brush a little bit smaller. And we're going to start putting shading in places that are not inherently in the shade. Just right here and right here. Now, why would you do that, you might ask? Well, if you've ever seen like let's use a sheet of metal, for instance, that's maybe shaped like this. And when you have shade, it's going to be on the sides of this lump for sure. But when you get to this divot here, there's another highlight. By treating the hair the same way as the metal, we see that we should put shading on both sides of the lump per se. So here would be the top of it. Let's put some right here. And beneath it. And of course, always going with the grain of the hair. I've compared it to paper, metal, now it's wood. Just don't think about hair when you draw hair, you'll be fine. And these jagged lines kind of give the illusion that there are a bunch of hairs right here. That it's a group and not just like one single piece. Let's go ahead and carry some of our shadows down a little bit and blend into the lines that we made earlier to kind of break up all of the big pieces into smaller pieces. Okay, now we got that. I go ahead and combine all my layers as soon as I'm done with them because I don't like to have to deal with them and sort through them and look at them. So I don't. Now let's take... With green, I always like to do highlights in yellow. So in those places where there are not shadows, let's go ahead and put some yellow. Now I want to deal with these lines because they're annoying and they look bad. Wait, did I combine the wrong layer? Boy, Okay, it's on the right one now. Anyway, preserve opacity and then go over all of the stuff that was previously black. And I also feel like down here is a little bit more bland than up here, so I'm gonna go ahead and just add another band of shading to it. Combine all of these layers now. I just don't want to deal with them. Goodbye. Now, to make it a little bit more realistic, I get a layer on the top, clipping groups, so that I can only draw on the layer below it. Multiply, blue, whatever. And then go from the bottom and kind of just make a gradient going all the way up. Okay, now, this is a relatively simple design. There's a lot of lines in it, but most of the strips are going in the same direction. Now we're gonna fuck that whole thing up. Let's take a mid-tone and start making thinner strips that follow almost the same path as everything else. If you just make them go any which random direction, it becomes chaotic and not in a very good way. It's good to have some sort of rhyme or reason to where you put these rogue strands of paper, metal, wood hair. To define that, then we take a highlight, put that sucker on there, and then a low light, and just kind of make it stand out a bit. Let's do some more in different random places. Just put little strands, just stick them anywhere you think there's a blank space, or somewhere you think you need to fill. Kind of flat, kind of interesting, floaty, ethereal. Now, just when you think you're finished, I guess you could stop here, doesn't really matter. I like to go a little bit further. Let's add some more shade and start to slowly get rid of these lines that are everywhere, all the sketch lines, by just painting over top of them. This is the cleanup process, which kind of just... This is the part where you just kind of gotta be patient. Oh, also, it's another thing you can do. Take your darker color, multiply again, and just kind of go around the edges, just a little bit. Especially on really round parts like the top of the head here. Blend it out just a little bit. Clipping group. I'll go ahead and speed up this refining process because there's not a whole lot to say about it. Just adding shadows where you think there need to be, and maybe even adding some lighter highlights. Let's take a secondary lighting source. I always do blue or green, but everything else is green, so I'm doing blue. And adding, it's probably going to be over here. So in these darker spaces, we're just going to do like a little bit of blue bouncing back. Right, lower the opacity so it's not obnoxious. There you go. You've got kind of you've got colorful way to break up the shadows a little bit. Going back to refining now. Actually, let's get this person a different face. Let's see. What kind of person should this be? I know what kind of person you are. You're a real sneaky bastard, aren't you? I have a feeling this is a sneaky one, so. Alright, brand new face, brand new attitude, brand new hair. Whoa, oh god. This one, we're gonna do curly. And I'm only gonna do to like here because I do not feel like drawing long curly hair. No, thank you, fuck that. I will be having fun today. Okay. And when doing curly hair, we're not actually doing curls like this. We're doing waves for the most part. And once we add shading to these waves, like in the metal sheet method I was talking to you about, it'll be more apparent that they're like corkscrews. I like to make curly hair kind of more wild and fly away than straight hair. Like out here, let's do some wild. Yeah. Don't, like I said, don't plan out the strands too hard, but definitely don't just put random strokes everywhere, because figuring that out later on while you're refining is gonna take forever and also be a pain in the butt. I just decided I don't like this. Okay, redo. Draw the silhouette of the hair first. Alright, so I just did a reasonable amount of squiggles. These squiggles I will now transform into strips. Some of them I kind of tucked behind others, some of them are going different directions, but they're all generally following the same path. I'm trying to make all the curls the same size as well. I decided that I am not willing to put in the time to do both sides, so we're just gonna do the one. Let's actually flip it over to this side. Come to the party side! Woo! And let's actually change the bangs so that this actually makes sense. Now, we go through the same process. Let's make this one red. This can be red hair. Usually I do this part first because it makes it more pleasant to work with. Take a nice vibrant red, and then this one. Nope, this one. Actually, I lied. This one. Now you go through just differentiating which parts are in the foreground and which parts are in the background. So let's pick about this much out of the bundle and send it to the back in the shadow zone. It's not going to matter that much because you're going to be drawing so many strands of hair over it, so don't worry about every tiny little space that's going to need a shadow. And to really establish that it's curly hair and not wavy, this right here is a corkscrew. You just don't know it yet. All it takes is, let's see, all it takes is a little bit of shadow right there, and it looks like a corkscrew, like it's winding around itself. Again, the extra layer of just gradient. And thus begins the process of sitting here for about 30 minutes and painting. Fucking son of a bitch, I forgot to press record. Okay. So here's what you missed. I'm gonna go back through all of this because I really do want to include how to draw, or how to paint rather, this texture here. Ignore the side, I didn't finish it. I really do want you to be able to know how to paint it, but I did not press record, so we're gonna try it again, but like a mini version. So get your purple! Put it down! It's gonna be a big blob. Just forget everything I told you about the other hair because this works completely different. Having a texture brush at this time is like super important, or else you're probably not going to end up with super good results. So you're going to treat it like a soft shape and not a strip of paper. And then what I did was I started to divide it up into like different sections. kind of similar to the pieces of paper, but they're 3D shapes. So make them kind of like round and 3D. They have volume. And then you go back with a lighter color. And when you render, try to break up these shapes a little bit, but still keep them mostly intact. Just follow them very vaguely. Because we don't want it to look like they're tied up into a bunch of individual little ponytails. But we don't want it to look flat, like it's just one big circle. And in between the shading, or just anywhere you feel looks a little bit naked, you can add little corkscrews or squiggles or what have you to add texture in there. And then over here at the edge, I did kind of it's like a zigzag going out. It's just little corkscrews from the side. And one thing that I did not do already is you get a much lighter color and start just like, let's get rid of this thing and go back to the actual good one. And just start putting like little flecks in there. Just some little flecks of light. And that's where all the little tiny individual hairs have their own little band of light. And then go back in to all of them and just kind of like corkscrew them out. By adding these little flecks, it really brings out that there are individual pieces in there and not just one part. Let's also do a reflection on this one. Let's go with, there are some colors that just don't work super well as highlights. Like, I don't think purple works very well as a highlight. I just personally don't like yellow, so I don't use it super often. And we're gonna put this in here with the same kind of zigzag method. All this out here don't matter. Can put a little bit more of a reflection on the tallest parts of the bigger pieces of hair that we separated, which you can still kind of see where they were separated. I'm actually now feeling like there's not enough highlight area. So let's go back and put some more in there. Let's keep screwing with it. See how far we can go. Do a pink highlight up here. Let's do like luminosity and just blend it out and see if we can bring this part forward a little. Yeah, kinda. I'm not sure if I really like this light. Whatever. I'm not an expert. I never claimed to be an expert. Anybody telling you that I am is a liar. Just while we're all here, a lot of people don't know I have a Patreon where there are literal hundreds of things that I have never shown the world except for Patreon. If you pledge $7 or more, you get a pin sent to your house every single month and access to those hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pictures. And just thank you, because I wouldn't be able to be an artist and do what I do if people like you guys didn't click on my videos and enable me to keep doing that. Because YouTube is pretty much the #1 thing supporting me. And Patreon's contributing a lot too. Like, y'all are all I got. So if you want to help support me and help me continue to make videos and want to see a whole bunch of special exclusive stuff, including like tutorials and notes and animations, just pretty much everything I do behind the scenes. And you can even see speed paints early sometimes. So sorry to talk about that for so long, but thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll find the time to make more tutorials soon. Later.